and welcome to United by Rice. I'm Junko Goda, and with me is my co-host Ben Lee. How you doing,
Hey,
Ben?
hey, Junko. Good to see you.
So, we usually do our recap, but anything new last week, couple of days?
Yeah, sure. Well, as I look at myself, I realize I'm super red. I just came back from a little happy hour. So for
Got it. Asian
potential
glow.
sponsors out there who have that, whatever, that gummy or whatever for Asian flush, we are ready for you because
Ah,
for anybody watching, you can see that I get the Asian flush for sure after just one drink.
and I have heard that product on bigger podcasts. So
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. We
anyone who
might have
has
to.
an anti-Asian glow gummy, please let us know. We
Yeah,
will.
we'll have to reach out to them maybe ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, but the main thing I did this past weekend, I didn't get to see as many films as I'd like to, but I went to what's called CamFest here in San Francisco. It's a center for Asian media, essentially, film festival. I think it used to actually be called like the Asian Film Festival of San Francisco. So I think they've
Something
gone
like that,
through some
yeah.
iterations. But I think as we talked about, I went to the opening film by Tad Nakamura, I think someone that you know well, and
Yep.
it's called Third Act. As you warned, a very poignant and emotionally tear-jerking type of film.
And you
Because
can't give away too much because I think it's in Chicago this weekend. It's
that's
making
right.
it's kicked off its run, so you can't give away too much. Ben.
Sure. Well, I'll give away what's in the log line, right? Which
Yeah.
is, Tad is a filmmaker, and his father is maybe not in the popular culture a well-known filmmaker because most of his films were made, like of Japanese and Japanese Americans, and of course a lot of films about the internment camps that he spent some of his youth in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not like big studio blockbuster films, and maybe not everybody knows him, but in Asian circles and Asian filmmaking circles, a true legend. And they started filming what was meant to be like a film about his dad, but then during the course of it, he received a diagnosis of Parkinson's, and so I probably don't have to say much more for you to guess. That of course there's going to be
Right.
some moments in the film that
Yeah. Oh, but as far as the West Coast goes, his dad has been showing up to the screenings and taking photos on the red carpet. So
yes,
there's that.
that's right. Maybe that's an important point. Like this isn't
Yeah.
the epilogue, right? This
Yes.
is he's still alive,
Yeah.
and still very. I think probably one of the most fun parts of the film is even as you see maybe some of the decline of his communication capabilities, he's still giving direction to his son. He's still giving like
Yeah.
beats about like, oh, maybe this isn't something we'll use in the final
Yeah.
final
Exactly.
cut. So
Yep.
it's pretty amusing, and
Yep.
and those moments are great. What about you? I know that you went to at
Yeah.
least one cool event this past week.
Yeah, it was a Gold House and Academy Museum sponsored event. It was a screening of Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is its 25th anniversary. And it was actually, so the month of May has been curated by Janet Yang, who's the current Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences president. And so she was asked to curate the museum screenings celebrating API heritage. And also with this event, Ang Lee and Zhang Zi were actually there in person. And I didn't realize like Ang Lee is like a pretty cool dude, like pretty chill dude for a director. I'm sure when he's on set, he's very intense, but really good, really great talk back. And I gotta say, like, if anyone is able to see that 35 millimeter print of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like, take the time to do it. It still holds up so well. I think when I saw it like either like in one of the larger lecture halls in my college campus, I think. So it was less than ideal conditions. I don't think I even saw it in a movie theater. So yeah, that was the best screening experience I had, and it's just it it reminds you like just how great cinema is, how shooting in film is so great. Yeah. So it's just a reminder that like good stories will still be good 25 years later.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting in our short little time of doing this podcast, like Ang Lee's come up a couple times, right, in terms of that longevity of filmmaking, because of course we had Bobo Lay from The Wedding Banquet, which was not quite a remake, but certainly a modernization of his
Right.
original film, The Wedding Banquet. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, that's very
so-
exciting. Just to talk about our guest today,
Yeah.
we have Sherri Chung. So we're going to go behind the camera, I think, for the first time in our podcast a little bit, and talk to a composer who has really, I think, her star has really started to shine as of late. She's been on a lot of notable shows, including the new Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai animated
Right.
series.
Both
Kung
seasons.
Fu,
Yeah.
right. So a number of different shows, and she was also just lovely to talk to.
Yeah. And then her
you had-
newest one is called her newest show right now.
Oh, you're asking me.
Oh yeah, I'm asking you, and I'm also sniffling at the same time. Allergies.
Yeah. Her newest show, we should probably edit this. Now that I think about it, let me hit.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's her latest show right now?
It's called Based on a True Story. It is that Kaylee Cuoco show that's on Peacock.
Okay.
So I think
Okay.
it's season 2, right? And it's a little bit of a genre bending, dark comedy, murder mystery type of show. And when I listen to some of the soundtrack myself, it's got some Dexter beats a little bit, some of that type of show. And she'll mention a couple of references in our interview as well. But
Yeah, and it's really it's just like nice to have. Like I hope in this podcast, especially, like we bring in people you don't usually expect to be on a podcast, composer, but like, I have a lot of like friends who are composers, but like people who are like it could be even like people who are in like the DIT department, and that's the only thing they do.
Yeah.
But you train for years to do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it might be like, and the other thing, kind of like one of our other podcast guests, they didn't even know something like that existed until they were watching TV or an award show, or they were listening to a podcast. So I think it's really important to like keep bringing in, those folks on the end credits after a while, and you're like, you have no idea what those people are, like those folks.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, she references something that maybe not everybody know. Like if you're in the industry, you know it, but below the line, right? So this concept of above the line and below the line, when they talk about the credits, it's above the line tends to be your director, executive producer, and then like the top 3 or 4 cast, and then everyone else tends to be below the line. And so I think to the point you're making, those below the line folks, it sounds like a derogatory phrase, but they often have as much to do with the success of a project as anyone else. And certainly we can't argue with the fact that music and soundtracks and scores, think of
I was just gonna
Jaws,
say,
right?
and I was just gonna say all those names actually are all in our union contracts. So like decades and decades and decades ago, all the unions and all the folks, like they fought for where their names would show up on the screen. So that's also a part of it too. So it's very there's a reason for everyone being in that order and in that way and grouped in that way. Not a lot of people think about it, but the end credits is also where composers shine.
Exactly. And again, like I think music composition and scores is something that I've always been a fan of, and it really good scores sometimes make the film more than the acting or the dialogue.
Actually,
right?
Ben, do you play an instrument or anything?
Great question.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
I play nothing. If I move the camera, I have a guitar hanging over there, which was a pandemic purchased instrument, and thought I could teach myself how to play. doing a little whatever game was on my PlayStation.
So you weren't
But
forced to play an instrument growing up?
no, there's like there's I have this story in my head that I did go and play piano, much like Sherri talked about too, right? Like her Chinese parent was like, "Hey, you got to go learn classical piano." And I remember going. I remember going to lessons, getting like my little statues, and I think like you pass some test and you get like
Oh,
your
like an
little
achievement statue thing.
statue. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I don't remember why it ended. I
Well, you obviously just weren't that interested, or else you would have been like Sherri, kicking and screaming and being like, "No,
but
I must be attached to a piano."
but I will tell you that it, probably not kicking and screaming, like probably more of, I think my parents maybe just decided they didn't want to take me anymore. Maybe they saw I had no talent or something. I don't know.
Well, do you have siblings too?
I
Like,
do. I've got an older sister and two half sisters. But actually, the musician in my family is my dad. My dad,
oh,
like, can play the piano without looking at sheet music.
Yeah,
and
he
can
hears
just,
it,
like,
yeah.
he hears a song and he can play it. His sister, one of his sisters, was a piano teacher, so they have that talent in their family. And there's a baby grandson in his home, so it's something that
okay.
I definitely like to. I don't know if strumming is the right term, but I definitely
Right.
used to love to like play a little bit, but I
Yeah.
can't. How about you? Are you a musician?
Yeah, I grew up. I played the piano for a hot second, and then flute ended up being my jam through grade school, I think. So I never really went beyond the basics. But definitely a lot of muscle memory, and I think I ended up booking a Geico commercial because
really?
of my flute skills. Which, yes, and then like a minute before camera's up when we're shooting, they're like, "Hey, instead of the flute, can you play the violin?" I'm like, "Yes, I can learn to play the violin in 2 minutes and 30 seconds." So then I was going on YouTube and trying to remember like hand positioning and your Yeah.
They're not similar instruments. Like, how did that go?
Oh, it went fine. I was just asking like the entire violin section because an orchestra was hired for this commercial, so I'm just like, "Hi everyone, can you help me?" And so they gave me some pointers. I looked at some YouTube with like how your arms are supposed to be like, and
Yeah.
that was it. That was definitely a fake it till you make it, and I
Yeah.
definitely got great residuals off that Geico commercial, so I'm not complaining.
How amazing! How amazing! As a paid professional musician.
Yeah, no. The professionals are around you. Oh yeah, no.
I don't know. You could take credit as I'd put that on your CV. Like you played violin and the flute for commercial.
I could fake the violin. So
yeah.
so I've never. I think at one point, maybe in my teens, I wanted to like write music a little bit. I was a band aid for a Asian American boy band back in the early
Band Aid.
2000s.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, I infamously dated the drummer.
Ah.
Good times. Fun times.
And I know you like me. Like, you were at was it a J-pop or a K-pop thing recently too, right?
Oh yeah, well that was
Yeah.
for work too. I was emceeing a new Japanese
Okay.
boy band. So, but I think as a filmmaker, what I think intimidates me sometimes about music is that I am surrounded by like composers or musician friends who went to Berklee School of Music. They speak music, right? And those
Sure.
people have always intimidated me. And I think one thing that scares me as a filmmaker is like, how do I communicate to a composer, or, how does one work with a composer? Like little stuff I've done, like actually Moby Gratis, Moby's free database of music. I know we actually use it in our podcast, but that's kind of how I just like put stuff together in a very simple way. And I've managed to not have to directly work with a composer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think like Sherri, as we got to know her during the course of our interview, it probably also matters who that composer is, right? I imagine,
Right.
Hans Zimmer walks in the door and he's telling you what your score needs to be versus someone who's trying to make her name still and establish herself, you probably have a different conversation with someone like that, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. But with Sherry's style, I think with working with filmmakers, is definitely is a lot more straightforward than I thought. It's a lot more
yeah,
straightforward, and there's also Sherry's personality. I would imagine it'd be very easy to work with
oh
Sherry on
yeah,
set and stuff. Um,
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, yeah, I hope people enjoy getting to know Sherry and her work a little bit in her interview. And yeah, like we'd love to have her on again, for our next big thing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of the shows, I don't know how much you've gotten a chance to listen to her music, but they're
Only the Gremlins. I
oh,
popped on
okay.
the
Well,
Gremlins.
and the
So,
Gremlins one is very cinematic sounding, right? Like the contrast between that and some of the other shows is it could play like a film score. It's very
mm,
beautiful, and you could listen to it outside of watching the show. Whereas some scores don't really live outside the show, right? They have
yeah,
to
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
be seen with what's happening on screen. Were you a Gremlins fan growing up by any chance?
Neutral.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
stuffed gizmo in your closet.
I think I could have had a stuffed gizmo at one point. But now,
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't thought about that world in a while.
Mm.
So, and
Yeah.
I think the first season came out 2020 or 2021, I think. And everyone was really excited about it. And,
Yeah.
so the expansion pack on the Gremlins world exists for me, and it's waiting for me in the digital
Sure.
world.
Yeah.
Once I get around to it, yeah.
It's a cute. It's actually I've not watched all of it by any
Yeah.
means, but it's a cute show. She mentions that the creator, director, writer very deliberately casts a lot of Asian actors. So Ming Na
Yeah.
Wen is in it.
Yeah.
I think actually Isaac Wang, Dee Dee, is in it as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so it's got a very good cast, but I liked. People keep trying to tell me like those are horror movies and they were scary, but I don't think of them that way at all. I thought they were really funny
I mean,
and cute.
they were scary. I mean, I was also the kid who was absolutely freaked out by Cocoon, so which
That's a little creepy. I get it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
But you have to get it. People mostly,
yeah,
I think, are like, "Oh, warm fuzzy memories," and I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Yeah."
Any other kind of musical notes that you
Musical.
have before we play our interview?
No, I think we can go ahead and play Sherry's interview.
Well, it's good to talk to you, everybody. As she mentioned herself, like she is a star on the rise and is looking to work on more projects, I'm sure. So, for any of our
Yep.
future guests or listeners, feel free to reach out to us. We'll get you in touch. But here's Sherri Chung.
And welcome back to United by Rice. I'm back here with Ben Lee, and our guest today is Sherri Chung. Hi, Sherry. How you doing?
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Nice to be heard.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you for making time for us today.
Thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to talk about everything. It's an honor. Thank you.
I remember was it first season one of Gremlins coming out, and there was such a push, and it was so awesome. So I guess I'll let Ben kind of jump in with to kick us off here.
Sure. Yeah, well, we're definitely excited to talk about some of your recent work. I actually also remember being, I think, at San Diego Comic Con, and like maybe Ming Na and the director or showrunner did a panel. I got very excited because I'm a big Gremlins fan, Gizmo fan, etc. But we'll talk about that project. I'd love to just learn a little bit more about you and have you tell us and our audience a little bit about your background, what got you into television and film scoring to begin with. When did you first realize music was going to be your way into storytelling?
Did you see Gremlins? The
Too scared
original.
of Gremlins. I was way too scared. Yeah. I didn't come to that one till later. But what I came to first was so I'm half Chinese. My father is Chinese. My mother is Caucasian, actually from Canada, and and the only reason I bring that up really is because I studied classical piano, which, oh, big surprise if you're like
Right.
Asian kid of any kind. But I wanted piano lessons. I wanted so badly to learn piano. I just thought it was just a wonderful, expressive instrument. And so probably around like age 4 or 5, I just sort of begged my parents to get me lessons. And they're like, okay, well, we'll see if this sticks. And it did. And so I was probably more on track to do classical performance. I really enjoyed it, but I felt more of a calling to be creative, and frankly, I had the drive to practice, in a way that classical, pianists would need. But I think my age sort of caught up with my talent. It's just like, yeah, this isn't really quite for me. But
Oh.
creatively, I knew this was something I wanted to do, and so I was writing songs and playing the piano and using my voice more as like another instrument rather than just, a vehicle for lyrics, as it were. And then I saw when I was maybe in my teens or late teens, maybe early teens, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a movie called Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, with an
Oh,
Ah.
incredible score by Michael Kamen, and I was just changed. I really was changed by that score and that way of storytelling. And I just decided from that moment on, that's what I want to do. I want to tell stories in that way, and have that sort of creative outlet. And it took me a while to get there because, that you're only, you're young, you got to finish high school, you got to go to college. And so I did go to college for composition and theory. So I went a very sort of formal, global training. And then I went to graduate school out here in California.
I love your balloon making a guest
hap-
appearance.
happy 1 month belated birthday, by the way.
Yes. Happy belated.
Thank you. So, but anyway, so then I went to school
Yeah, yeah.
for it, and then I, thus launched my career, I guess. Now we are here.
Now, when you saw Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, what was it? Like, I remember my like musical moment was like the red violin. But it's
Oh my,
something about Yo-Yo Ma's performance as, as like a 12-year-old that like really hit me. What was it? Was it the arrangement? Was it you were in a good theater with good
I
sound?
think I think you made that up, Junko. That's like what someone who wants to be thought of as an intellectual would say. God, when I was 12, I'm pretty sure it was like the Flintstones theme or something. But anyway,
It's I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like as a child, you're not typically like enthralled by classical music, but there's like the special ones.
there was. I mean, there was, and I think to your point, that was something. There was the classical music of just, of Bach and Beethoven and Chopin, and
Yeah.
Rachmaninoff, and you study all those incredibly moving pieces by those, obviously, legends and icons. But and there was something, and I think that's the point. Is when I heard this score, and I had heard other scores. I had
Yeah, yeah.
films, and I mean, I did grow up on all of John Williams and Alan Silvestri's and Jerry
Right.
Goldsmith's work as well. But there was just something about this one that was like, what doth my ears hear?
Ah.
It was so different from anything that had ever resonated. I mean, his overture, that fanfare, is
Yeah.
just. I mean, I think about it and I just get goosebumps, and sometimes I tear up.
Mm.
Something so
soundtracks
moving about it.
soundtracks really are
Right.
today's like symphony and orchestra, right? We don't have many other modern forms of it, so
No,
I totally understand it and totally love it. I do have a. This is a ridiculous question, and this isn't the role I play on these podcasts typically, but I've always in Robin Hood Prince of it's the Bryan Adams song that it's also very well known, right? But I've always thought it was grammatically incorrect. Everything I do it for you. Where do you both sit on
I
that
do
side of the
them for
debate?
you.
Everything I do it for you. So the it is supposed to tie to everything. And this song was a colossal hit, and it's always bothered me since.
Well, okay, so I feel like grammatically you could go either way, right? Because if it's everything, that means it's a thing, it's singular. But usually when we say everything, it's all encompassing. It's
Yeah.
near and dear, like
Yeah.
it's like a deer running and the deer are
It's just always
running. The deer are running.
Yeah, it's always bothered me. It's like there was one extra note and he couldn't figure out a lyric, and so he threw in an extra pronoun, and it's
Right, but that's
anyway.
the thing with lyrics. You have creative license, poetic license, as it were. But little bit of trivia, and I
Hmm.
actually I hope I have the trivia right. So a lot of times when we hear a song that gets famous from a movie, it's
Uh-huh.
because the artist wrote the song for the movie. Like all kinds of examples that we can. But
Right.
actually, the song, if I'm not mistaken, was actually written based on one of Michael Kamen's theme. It was, I think it was Mary. Is it Mary? It's
Hmm.
whatever her theme is, and it was da 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 da. So we know it, but like it was
Uh,
Michael who wrote the theme, and then he and Brian worked to write
Oh.
the song. So
I see. So he used the melody and carried it over. So
Hmm.
he was forced to be grammatically incorrect. I think
exactly,
is what you're saying. Okay.
horned. They made him do it. They,
It
Yeah.
has to be this way.
Well, Sherry, you have such a eclectic catalog, right? You've scored everything from romantic dramas to murder mysteries and animated films and television. What is there a connective tissue to the projects that you pick, and what draws you to different projects
Yeah.
that you choose?
Pays
right.
the bills.
And not the make it rain kind of money. It's well, okay. I mean, the truth is like I feel like when anyone is starting out in their career. I mean, I don't want to speak for every single profession, but
Right.
certainly in film and composing work, the way that I started, fresh out of school, you're just you got to cut your teeth somewhere. You generally take on, at least this was for me. You generally take on projects as they're offered to you. Like, hey, I've got a short film, if somebody recommended you, do you have time to do this? Yes. I've got a short film. It's only, or I've got an indie film. It's only got a small budget. Do you, can you? Yes. I've got it. Da, 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 da. It's a horror. Yes. It's a comedy. Yes. It's animation. Yes, 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 yes. And so I feel like a lot of that stems from the need to make a living.
Hmm.
But I would say secondary to that, once you can make a living, and I'm in a very fortunate spot now where I can probably I can be a lot more judicious, if you will, about which projects I want to take. But I think a lot of it comes from, oh, I haven't done that before, or I haven't done that before, or that seems really interesting, or that just fits in really nicely with the schedule. So I mean, I'd like to be very, the artist to say, oh, yes, I really went after this project. But I will say, in the case of Based on a True Story, which I know is one of the things that we get to talk about today, the log line is what got me. It was, I think the original log line was like, a retired tennis player, a real estate agent, and a plumber explore America's obsession with true crime and the slow closing toilet seat. And I'm like, well, this is 100% for me. This is
Yeah.
100% for me. I'm obsessed with a slow closing toilet seat. It's a true crime. I mean, the whole thing. So I think there's a lot of there's a lot of necessity, but once you kind of get past that, there's a lot of, I wonder what that's about, like
Uh,
curiosity and like just artistic stimulation. And once I met the creator Craig Rosenberg, I was like, oh my gosh, I please, and the producing director Alex Bono, and I'm like, yes, yes, I must work with these people. So a lot of it is it starts by something that's very fundamental, and then it usually ends up in something that is really kind of soul filling in the sense of creation and collaboration.
uh-huh.
Hmm.
But when you think about the tones of the show, then for let's stay on based on a true story. Obviously, satire, crime, comedy, thriller, dark comedy. I think the uh, what references do you use? Because it's not. Uh, I don't know that it's the least common genre, but it's not a common genre, right? So what are you drawing from your own personal experiences, but also just other references?
Yeah, I mean, I think about the time that I was looking at the project and being considered for it. Flight Attendant was one of those that had been really hot,
Mm.
and
That Kaylee, that's Kaylee also,
also
right?
also
Yep.
Kaylee.
Yes.
So it was a natural,
Hmm.
sort of a jump to be like, oh, okay, this is another type of work that she's done as well. And I think I mean, again, there's a lot of true crime aspect of it. It was one of Peacock's first. shows. And certainly not their first one, but by any
Yeah.
stretch. But it was just one of their ones that they were going to push really, really big with some,
Right.
bigger, heavy hitting actors and push some money behind it too. And I think that there was just, I mean, in terms of artistic references that you're mentioning, I mean, look, there's a lot to be said for a blank slate that's kind of terrifying, like a blank canvas. So fear is a major, it's a major stimulus.
Huh.
But I think a lot of it was it was so open. So when I wrote the first piece for it, I was just like, I mean, they're really open to what I thought. And I thought, well, there's nothing else like it. So why don't I just do something that I've never done before and not even really maybe draw upon too many influences. The one influence that I really did actually tap into was noir.
Hmm.
I was I think I just really wanted to do a noir. I think if any filmmakers out there have a noir they'd like, I really would love to do it.
Mm,
There's a little bit of noir-esque to it with, crime solving and private
sure.
Right,
investigation,
right.
especially in the season two. But I think a lot of it was, it hadn't been done before. So now there's a real openness. Like everyone's sort of really open to what this new sound could be.
And
Yeah.
I have it's a creative question, I guess a tactical question. At what point do you work on the credits scene or the opening credits theme? Is that come after you've watched a bunch of episodes and developed a sound signature sound for the show, or do you actually start there, or does it vary by project?
It varies. It's a good question, and it varies. And I think it literally comes down to the part of the process that maybe editorial is in at the time. I've worked on projects where it's like, hey, we need like a main theme only. Like just want a main theme.
Mm,
Like, oh, okay. I've worked on projects too where, something that becomes a prominent sound in the show becomes the main theme. In the case of Based on a True Story, I mean, the only thing on the title card is just one of those sort of like heavy hitting bangs, which is like prepared piano and harp, and it's just like a huge like bang.
uh-huh.
And
Mm.
I think it kind of changes from episode to episode. But the very very first thing I wrote for it, which I thought was going to be in sort of an opening sequence, actually ended up being the end credits.
Oh.
It just ended up being where it was like, hey, this is kind of a signature sound, and it appears several times in the series as well, but
Mm.
it's ended up being just sort of a signature sound of the project that it was like, hey, here's the most uninterrupted time. Composers,
Yeah.
we love the uninterrupted time. There's no sound effects over our music, so we can just kind of go for it and put it in the end credits, or maybe hopefully in the titles. But it does vary, and it's sometimes the opening titles aren't really as exciting because it's just like a sting, you know.
Yeah, there's more of that, just like quick, almost no opening
Yeah,
credits,
the
but the
formats have
closing credits for
completely
sure.
changed in
I
what, like the last 6 years alone?
Mhm.
Even, yeah, yeah.
It's so true. I mean, we don't often get like 1 or 2 minute main titles anymore.
Mm. I
When we
think,
do, I
yeah.
love.
Like the
Yeah.
one I can really think of that the general audience really has thoughts on was apparently the White Lotus intro.
White
Uh,
Lotus. I mean, there's Severance. There's
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, Game of Thrones.
yeah. But apparently they like for this season Severance, like they changed up the intro and then like people really didn't like it. It was like way a little bit too, it was still had the melody, but it was like not to the liking of the fans. Like,
Ah, guys, just television.
but yeah, Sherry, I mean, imagine that. You're like, you write something and then the fans love it so much and you're like, and then by season 3, you're like, well, I want to have a variation on it. And the fans are like, no, you can't.
You're not allowed. I
Yeah.
know. I mean, and honestly, it goes to show you how much of a service industry it is. And usually we think of a service industry to the people who are hiring us, which 100% is true.
Yeah.
The filmmakers, the directors, the producers. But there's also like a service to the fans.
Yeah.
That they're the fans are the kind of the dictators in the long run.
At the end of the day, yeah, absolutely.
No.
You know, another question I have on the Based on a True Story soundtrack or score, more so than some of the others that you've worked on. And actually, I'd love to talk about your work with the Television Academy too. But do you think when people vote for best score, they should be? I tend to think it's based on like one cinematic ballad that's memorable versus maybe the actual artistry of having to overlay a film with a score, which is what I see based on a true story, right? To your point, like lots of interruptions, but that's actually the job, right? That's what you're asked to do. Where in your work with the Television Academy, is there any influence you can have on how people actually think about the work that a composer does?
I think that's a really great question. So as governor or one of the governors of the music branch of the Television Academy, and it changes every like 2 to 4 years. So other composers might have a different approach to it. But I think a lot of us feel really strongly about the craft of it, and the craft being, writing to picture, writing within parameters that are not just what do I feel today? What do I want to do today? It's those aren't the parameters that we get to care about. It doesn't matter whether you're feeling it today or not. It doesn't matter whether you want to put that big, beautiful, luscious theme that's lyrical and a special moment to you that you really felt when you wrote it onto that scene. That's not what this is about. The parameters of writing to picture, to the time constraints, the budget restraints, the picture restraints, or I should say restraint again, parameters, because it's sort of this fixed thing that you need to make sense of, and still, you're limited in the number of words you can use to make that sentence and get that idea across. And to me, that is the craft. To me, that is the profession, and that is, in my opinion, what we celebrate and what we should celebrate and what we want to celebrate. And so it would be my hope and my goal to encourage others to have that same feeling. So when voting opens and you see the list of just, I mean, there's just myriad shows out there, myriad programs for people to hopefully have watched, but certainly to consider. And it would be my hope, and I think a lot of hope of a lot of my compatriots,
Mhm.
that that people are watching. It's true that you submit one episode, but the work itself is the outstanding musical composition for a series or for a show, for an entire series. So it would be my hope that we are all watching it in a way where, oh, we're taking that entire thing in there, the entire craft and profession and the experience emotionally that we have from that music and from the show, from the whole thing, the way that the music is working with the show, the way the show is working, with the audience, and that kind of that back and forth, that audience participation, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no, I appreciate that answer. Yep. Go
oh, I
ahead,
was just gonna
Junko.
say, like, just expand on that, and going back to your role as a governor with the Television Academy. Like, how do you, like, yeah, I guess like update us on like what because that's the stuff like you don't really like get interviewed on, and all the programs and like these ideas that you're bringing into the TV Academy, and where you want the TV Academy to go. Can you be able to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other great question too. I mean, look, I will say that governors will come and governors will go, and but the academy itself is very much the institution, is very much the stable the stable thing. And so there's a staff that's always there, and they're kind of overseeing everything. And the governors through all the different branches. There are 31 branches, so there basically there's 31 crafts of our television making industry, and there's probably more crafts than that, because even music, the music branch has composers,
Yeah.
songwriters, lyricists, music
Right.
supervisors, and music directors. So in that, there's probably like three or four crafts just in that one peer group.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the yes, I mean that is like my hope and goal, is to have a very inclusive environment, a very something that is that we're getting all the different voices from all of the different music crafts in the industry. And there is a peer group executive committee, so there is like a small committee that's handpicked by governors that we meet at least quarterly in the year, just to talk about ideas, ways that we can bring a community together, ways that we can have sort of an outreach, ways that we can update some of our rules
Hmm.
and for submissions. Because, as I mean, Ben, you've already mentioned, like, I mean, the industry's, or both of you mentioned, there's industry's changing every couple of years, even less than that, and there's new practices and new ways of doing things, ways of doing the music, the main title, the minimum for a main
Oh yeah.
title is to be like 30 seconds. And it had to kind of
Ah,
be lowered a little bit because most main titles would not be eligible. And then you
yeah.
have sort of skewed representation of what is being created in our industry. So there's a lot
Right,
of, so
right.
that's a lot of the role of
Uh,
governor and
Yeah,
something that
yeah. So,
I,
from your perspective, how things have been changing as far as the submission goes, so obviously the duration um, parameter has changed, and what other like yeah submission parameters are like changing slash on the horizon for you guys for
yeah, I
your
mean,
yeah
every year it's a big part of the process is to sort of is a debrief to figure out okay
mm,
what sort of submissions were we seeing this year, what sort of qualifying elements were either keeping certain submissions ineligible or what kind of were
mm,
keeping certain submissions too eligible. I don't think that's a real thing, but
yeah yeah
was there anybody that was being excluded? Is there a larger group of submission types that are being excluded? We want to make sure that it's not just for the sake of inclusivity. It's more because again representing what is a part of our industry, what are the growing practices, and so a
yeah
lot of it is looking at that and making sure that we are again representing that. And so but there's a whole chain of command and a process, and
yeah
being a part of it is a very much a volunteer position. Speaking of positions of service, I feel most of the time that I have no power whatsoever,
uh,
except the power of influence, I guess. And I don't mean influence over someone else. I mean the power to sort of influence the academy based on
sure.
what
yeah
my peers and colleagues and compatriots
mm,
are feeling and sensing. And so it's like right to your, it's kind of like any political position,
yeah
right to your representative and see what they can do with it. Maybe they can do something, maybe they can't, maybe it has to be passed on to the the things that I've been able to accomplish were probably set forth by governors before me. The things that
right
hopefully will be accomplished in the next several years
mm.
will be hopefully set in motion by me, but actually brought to fruition by a future governor.
Yeah, definitely yeah it's the process has to start somewhere
Yeah.
Exactly,
yeah
exactly, and it's
You know,
never
I,
ending.
yeah
yeah. To change gears a little bit here, we often on the show talk to on-screen performers, and the topic of Asian American representation and the struggle always is a big part of our discussion. But I'd love to hear from your perspective, like behind the screen and working in music. As an Asian American woman in the space, do you feel that doors are also opening wider than they have before, or is it different? Is it a different experience behind the screen?
Yes, I think that's a really great question. I think film composing in particular, I can't speak for in front of the camera, but certainly behind the camera, and to use the phrase that is often used for our profession, below the line. A
Hmm.
lot of that is when I started in the industry, it was very difficult to get to sort of break into the industry in the ways that people can do it now. And I think part of that is because people have been made more aware, more specifically aware that there have generally been white males doing this job for the
Hmm.
majority of the what's it called, the sort of existence of film composing
yeah
has all been white males.
Sure.
And there are some stories and some experiences where one can say, "Wow, I've actually been specifically shut out of this, or out of this project because I'm a woman or because I'm not white." I mean, I very few times have I actually heard it said to my face, "We don't
Yeah.
think you can do this," but most of the time it's been, well, you don't have the right credits, you don't have enough of the right credits. And some of that actually makes sense to me. There are things that I can do now that I would never have been able to do 5 years ago. I
mm,
just didn't have the experience to do
yeah
it.
so that's a fair assessment at the time
Yeah, I mean,
relatively
yeah, a lot of it is. I mean, even when I went to school for specifically for film scoring, I was one of two
ah
female composers who were going through school. And education is not the only way to get into this, but it's certainly a big way to have another composer, let's say, who's further along in their career, hire an assistant, hire you, help you cut your teeth. I think another reason why it was harder to break into the industry when I started, and it does sound like, oh, it was always harder. We had to walk uphill both ways with no feet. I mean,
yeah
there's always going to be that little bit of like, oh, you guys have it easier now before. But I do think something is true that There are a lot more composers now, however, than when I started, but there's also a lot more opportunity to break into the industry because there's a lot more content being
A lot
made.
more
When
content,
I
sure.
started, the only way you could pretty much start was like short films, indie films, commercials, and you could get into doing like film festivals. The only way to get into like episodic or television was probably through another composer, like not me, but like the person who hired me to write on their shows, help them write on their shows, and that was the way I was able to break into episodic. I was an assistant. I did additional writing. I jumped on other people's teams, and that was the way that I sort of cut my teeth and was able to sort of break in and get some credits to my name. But again, it was harder then because there was no streaming. So now I would say now when you have composers that are newer and starting out their careers and they get a big break, it still might be a show that you don't see on Netflix. Like, there's just so many shows on Netflix and no one ever saw it. But the connections that they're making through that, or they are now made, connections with executives, where when I was starting, we don't make connections with executives, we made connections with filmmakers who were just starting out, and maybe in 10 years they'll also, I do see that the industry is opening up its doors to newer voices, whether they're voices of color or gender diversity. I do think all that has been a very large ship to turn, and I still think we're turning it. But I do think that one of the reasons is the awareness in general. Um, I do think that it's a slippery slope too, because nobody wants to be hired because of some way that they identify. I
Sure.
didn't do anything to be a female. I didn't do anything to be Asian.
Yeah, right, right.
So what of course I'd rather people focus on, oh, they do really good work. That composer
Yeah.
does really good work. But I do think,
Yeah,
does have to be an intentional shift before it becomes a normalized
yeah,
thing.
and I
Well,
think yeah.
and to those lines. Oh, sorry, Drew.
Oh,
I'll ask and then you go.
oh yeah, yeah.
To those lines, like there is just like in acting, right? We all get upset when a Asian character's cast with a white actor, right? So I'm interested in a couple of the projects that you've worked on, like Kung Fu or Secrets of the Mogwai, The Gremlins, which is a largely Asian cast. Did they purposely, like, are we at a point in television making history where these are Asian themed shows? They purposely went and found a composer that identifies with the culture more closely.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like think, like we were talking about before, is really at the end of the day, it's about the audience, and I think it's the audience that won't stand for it anymore. It's
Mm,
not really, yeah, that
Right.
those execs, the higher ups, not talking about the producers of the show, but the higher ups, um, are saying yes because, oh, if you don't make the right choice now, we're gonna get screwed over later on. Is
yeah.
really, we've seen it over and over again in the
I mean,
last 5 years easily.
I would say, I mean, I can't speak to the acting world, but I would say that, that's probably thought of more in the acting world. I would say in the composing world, I don't think executives give 2 cents about to whatever about whether the composer was of the same ethnicity. I shouldn't say it not across the board. I think what I'm saying about that is that I don't think that they're good. I don't think the repercussions are that big of a deal yet
Sure.
for us. But I will say, in the case of Kung Fu, the really cool thing about it is it sort of naturally came to me because I had worked with Christina Kim, the
Mm.
showrunner and the creator. I worked with her on another show called Blind Spot. And
Sure.
so when she went off to create the show, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is kind of amazing. It's female Asian, and oh, we can connect all the dots, and it's amazing and beautiful. But that, I mean, I can honestly say that I wasn't sought out after for that. Um, we already knew each other, which was so really great. I mean, so I will say the victory there was, hey, there's somebody, who said, hey, I worked with that person, I want to work with them again. I'm now moving up. I'm going to bring somebody with me.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
think in the case of also Gremlins, I will say that I will say that I demoed for it, and it was a blind taste test, and
Mm.
it just so happened that an Asian, composer
Mm.
was hired onto that. I want to say one more thing, if I could,
Oh
about
yeah.
and I know I can share this now because it was shared in another interview, but Z Chun, the creator of Gremlins, Secrets of the
Hmm.
Mogwai, and the second season, The Wild Batch, Z Chun actually wrote in his script, unless otherwise stated, all characters are to be Chinese.
Hmm.
Hmm?
And I was like, that is the coolest thing. So again, it takes somebody in positions of influence or power, or just somebody who people want to listen to say, hey, I'm going to take that person with me, or it's going to all be Asian. So in terms of representation of the cast, that was something that he really cared about. I think with composing it, but I do think it really comes down to, the right fit for the right job kind of thing.
Sure.
I think
But sometimes the right fit is someone who knows the background of the story really well, right? Or relates to it a little bit more.
Relates to it in a different way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We do like having a lot of the young Asian filmmakers or up and coming Asian filmmakers on, and it really is the 360 that we're hoping for, right? It's that Asian filmmakers will give more Asian, whether it's below the line or above the line, cast or crew opportunities. So it really is a goal of ours, and we're excited to see that happen.
All your listeners who are filmmakers, Asian composer.
Yes.
There you go.
Look, anytime anybody asks us, hey, do you know of a good Asian composer? We're going to say Sherri Chung. Here's
Shameless plug.
No.
Well, it's been quiet, like industry wide. It's been quiet for the last 2 years. So, yeah, we're all trying to make ends meet.
So I like to be snobby and say, I really know musical scores and soundtracks really well. But then I'll have a conversation with someone and say, I really like this composer, and they'll say, oh, that person's a fraud. They just copy things and stuff. So I'd love to talk to an expert, like who you obviously referenced Robin Hood from many years ago, but today, who are your favorite people at the game right now?
Gosh, well, Dario Marnelli is like just really, really amazing. Alexander Splat, love. Nicholas Patel.
Actually, kind of on that note, I have a question for you. Just as a filmmaker, I've worked with a lot of filmmakers around me who are just music encyclopedias. Their jam is to listen to a soundtrack that doesn't exist yet, but they'll curate all the music that they're writing to. And then if you're on the other side of that spectrum, so if you don't, like, maybe because I'm Asian, I grew up, playing the piano a little bit and a little bit of the flute. How does one without a lot of musical knowledge experience, how can I express to you as the composer what I want if I'm the director?
That is such a great question. I think it's a really important one, because what's crazy to me is that if somebody goes to film school to become a filmmaker, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's still nothing in the curriculum that has you working with another composer, teaching you or trying to pair you. I think maybe might be classes on music clearance.
Right. That's completely different.
I don't understand why we are not putting this in the curriculum. So it's a really good question. I mean, I would say this: talk to your composer or your potential composer the way you talk to your talent. The way you talk to your talent. You would probably not tell your lead male actor, do it like De Niro did in this. You'd probably shut them down for
right. Like,
gave them that.
Yeah, like I would imagine be like, throw names or throw samples, throw clips at you and be like, this direction.
Well, I mean, I would say, it's okay. It's totally okay. In fact, it's more than okay. In fact, it's probably the best to speak in dramatic terms. Like, hey, the character is feeling this. What we're seeing, though, is this. And I really want the character to be thinking this. And I want us to feel that, feel that. And so, you don't have to use, that moment in Pride and Prejudice when he holds her hand.
Right.
I mean, no, actually, you mentioned that. I'd be like, oh, I got you, girl, I got you.
Okay.
But honestly, you can say that. But if you say, look, there's always going to be temp music. It's just we can't get around it anymore.
Yeah.
But we'll say this: temp music is that. It's temporary music. It's a placeholder. And remember that temp music has an emotional attachment already to it. That the audience has, or that you as a filmmaker or the editor who maybe put the temp in there.
Oh yeah.
An emotional attachment to it. That's different. You don't want that emotional attachment anymore. So I would say, filmmaker, talk to your composer, talk to us like you probably spoke to the actors in that moment, or like you were telling your editor, listen, I really, or pitching your story,
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's like, I think just as a filmmaker, there's like a certain level of intimidation, I think. Like, for example, like, yeah, like back when I lived in Boston, I was surrounded by Berkeley, like School of Music folks and yeah, folks like that. And it was always really like they were kind of talking a different language. So it's like,
I say that we are just as intimidated talking to directors and filmmakers, more because especially before we've been hired. Before we've been hired, because it's like, well, I mean, if we're not communicating like through that barrier, then there's really no, well, I shouldn't say intimidation, but there's really no,
yeah.
It's like talking Chinese and Korean to each other. It's like two different languages.
Two different languages,
right?
but I feel like music is universal though, and that's why it's like sometimes you can hear it, you'd be like, yes, that's that thing. Or I want to feel like, I know, like, okay, in Based on True Story, I remember the creator and showrunner Craig Rosenberg had said to me, he's like, look, I don't want the score to be the White Lotus score. It shouldn't be that. This is not that show. It shouldn't be that. But I want it to feel that, what is the word? Distinctive, and like it can belong to no other, like in no other place than this. Now I don't know. I mean, that's like somebody saying, we really want you to create something iconic. I mean,
that's
decided by somebody else, not decided by me. So, but what was really great about that is that he was open to whatever that was. He just needed to feel, and he was just like, I just want to feel like when I turn on this show or when I go into this scene, it feels like that kind of storytelling is there, and that spoke volumes to me as a composer, because it basically said, oh, I got you. I have permission to do something zany, to do something that could quite possibly be distracting to the audience. But if somebody said, hey, I really don't want something like a White Lotus, because it is grabbing onto your attention. I want something that is more seamless. It's more transitional. It leans in instead of hits you. Those are all words that have nothing to do with music, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Feeling, and I like talk about shapes, like when I talk about Based on True Story, it's like when I talk about the shapes of the sound, or I talk about the sound, I think about something that's very angular, something that cuts you, something that's very tense, and it like hits you. It's not just like a boom. Yeah. It's like a whack. It's like a, that kind of thing. So like that's how I describe the sound of the music.
Yeah.
Keep tension, and that's how I would encourage filmmakers.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to know the language. I don't know the language. I don't know, like, dolly in, zoom out, close up, Apple box.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for clarifying that.
That was a very insightful answer. Well, it's been lovely to talk to you. We should probably let you go. We do have one last question for you.
Oh, yes. So, because we are united by rice, we always ask everyone, what is your favorite rice dish? Rice noodles included. It could be your favorite dish right now or your entire life.
Okay, so I had this teed up. First of all, I'm sorry to anyone who disagrees, but no brown rice, please. It is rice all the way. United by white rice. All rice is fine, but I get this dish, or sometimes I kind of make it, or sometimes I find someone to make it for me. I don't know, but it's I don't know if it's an official name, but it's like this chili crisp fried rice, and it's got the tofu and sesame oil and edamame and bok choy, and it's just kind of like all fried together with just the oils, and it's like the best thing I ever ate,
Ooh.
And replace the protein with your favorite protein, but
But I'm trying to place this. Like, this doesn't feel like something I can just walk into an Asian restaurant and order. Do you? It almost feels like it's a restaurant's custom.
When did your relationship with this dish start,
edamame.
Sherri?
It's kind of a private. It's in the private collection, I guess. It's specially made. But I think what I love about it is that it's like simple. It's and it's straightforward, and it's rice. It's rice.
Yeah. We're going to call it Sherri's straightforward special rice dish.
It's just, but it's spicy, it's crispy, it is unapologetically rice, it is starch, it is fat.
Yep.
It's the right amount of protein. We need protein. It's,
it's wonderful. Junko doesn't know this, but the way we're actually going to make money from this podcast is publishing a cookbook someday.
Pretty much. At this rate. Yeah.
Well, it's been lovely. Please join us again in the future. But good luck with the Emmy season, and it's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much. Wonderful to meet you both. And thank you so
Yes.
much for the support and the opportunity to talk about this, to talk about the projects and my whole career and all my thoughts about rice.
Of
Yay.
course.
Thank you,
Anytime. Thank you.
Sherry. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.